Welcome to Focus TV. I am Lillian Garcia, and I am a singer-songwriter, and I was with the WWE for 15 years hosting there. I use my voice for everything, including my podcast, Chasing Glory, and I wanted to bring this to you because I think it's so important. If you are someone that uses your voice, you need to find the right person to work with you. So I have somebody here in the studio that I'm going to introduce, my vocal coach, Arden Kaywin. Welcome to Focus TV.
Thank you.
So Arden, before we get started, I want everybody to kind of know a little bit background on you, how you got into vocal lessons and teaching and all of that.
Yeah. So I'm a classically trained singer. I have a bachelor's in vocal performance from Oberlin Conservatory and a master's in vocal performance from Manhattan School of Music. So I have trained. I have a lot of training. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, opera. Well, that's like a whole thing in of itself. But I don't really want to learn opera. I want to learn how to sing pop music, or I want to learn how to sing musical theater, you know. And the interesting thing is that my journey has been very circuitous to get to where I am now. And I have sung a lot of different kinds of music before really finding my place and my calling, which is, I think, to be able to bring out the best in other singers. So I sang professionally. I sang classical music professionally. I sang with Opera Theater of St. Louis and San Francisco Opera in their training program and Aspen Music Festival. I sang in Italy. And then I was in my mid-20s and I was burnt out.
Wow.
I was burnt out on classical music. I felt like it was all about these competing forces, none of which had to do with my own creativity. Felt like what the conductor wants, what the director wants, what the composer wants, 200 years of history, language, all this other stuff. And it was like, where am I in all that? Where's my creativity? And I had, and still do, have such respect for opera singers who managed to find their own creativity in that, because it was hard for me. I felt like I might as well be a violin. So I took a break, and I was in San Francisco at the time, and when I finished up working there, I could have gone back to New York City, where my whole life was classical music, or my brother at the time was living in Los Angeles, and I had, on my days off from San Francisco, been coming down here and doing some recording work with some composers down here who were doing like classical crossover, Josh Groban-y kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, having such frustration with the situation in the classical world when I was up in San Francisco, and then coming down here and being in the recording world and feeling so inspired and so free. And, you know, I was like, well, maybe I move to LA, maybe I don't go back to New York, and maybe I explore. So that started a decade-long endeavor into the commercial music world. And I was on an indie label, I made 2 pop records, I toured, a lot of my music's been used in film and TV, and it was 100% pop music. And, you know, throughout that time, I always studied, I have so much training, and it was my own journey of having to figure out how to use a healthy classical technique in service of non-classical music, pop music, commercial music, because most teachers really segment. Most teachers, if you go to an opera teacher, you're going to learn how to have an operatic sound. If you go to a pop teacher, you learn how to get a pop sound, and most of the time in my experience, you don't get very good technique. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, the pop teachers generally don't have the same kind of knowledge that the classical teachers do. But the classical teachers don't know how to
cross that
bridge. So in my own life, in my own work, I had to figure this all out on my own. And at the same time, a lot of the producers that I was working with on my own music and got to know well over the years will call me up from time to time and say, hey, I'm working with this other singer and they're really talented, but they're just like having trouble with this thing. And I know that you have this background and that you have a lot of training. Can you just come in and work with this singer just for like a day, you know, and help us out? So I sort of backdoored my way into a teaching studio. And at the time I had finished making my second record. I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and saw how the music industry was changing. And realizing that people weren't buying records anymore, and that the way to make money as a recording artist was you really had to be on the road, you had to tour and be on the road, 200, 250 days a year. And that I didn't want that. That just wasn't the life that I wanted. I love performing. I hate touring.
Really?
Yeah. And
you'd experienced so many years of it
yeah,
too.
I'd done it
so
a lot.
You did it, yeah.
And was at the point in my life where I, was getting married. I wanted to have a family, and I didn't want to be on the road. And so here, this other kind of avenue started to present itself working with singers, and I really liked it. And I started to see how all this work that I had done on my own, just trying to figure out how to stay healthy and sing healthfully, how to use my classical training in service of pop music without sounding like a classical singer. I had all this knowledge, and I had figured it all out. And why not help other people to do that too, so that they don't end up like Adele or and stop having to tour because they can't sing and they keep getting injured, So that was how I sort of backdoored my way into a teaching studio, and started really loving it. And then right around the same time, I started my own journey into self-actualization and mindfulness, which at that time had nothing to do with singing. It was just meditation classes and meditation retreats and doing other reading and things like that in my own life. And over the course of the last decade, in my work with singers, I started to just organically bring it in because that was where my mindset was. But then I started to notice how much of a difference it was making to them. And so then I started to really put my mind to, okay, this is something that singers need.
Right.
It's not just a physical endeavor. Well, let me rephrase that. It is a physical endeavor, but your body cannot do what your mind is sabotaging.
Yeah.
And so that's really what then got me into the whole path that I'm on now, which is high-level technical training along with mindfulness practices, because when you change your thinking, you change your singing, and then you can really reach the full potential of your voice.
Yeah. Tell everybody, first of all, why it's important to take lessons, because the first thing people say to me is, well, you already know how to sing.
Yes. Well, why do you take lessons? It's just like any other physical thing that you do with your body, that you need to train in a certain way to make sure that you're doing it healthfully. You don't want to make mistakes that are going to cost you in the long run, especially if you're somebody who uses their voice for their career. You need your voice, whether you're singing or whether you're talking.
Right.
And if you're doing something inefficient that you don't realize, it can actually cost you the longevity of your career. So that's number one, be healthy. Number two, there are so many ways that singing might sound good, but doesn't feel good. And the way that I work and the way that I teach, and what I want singers to know, is that if it doesn't feel good, then what's the point?
Yeah.
You're doing something that's an artistic, creative expression of yourself, right? And I have worked with plenty of singers where it might sound pretty good out there to the rest of the audience, but it really hurts them.
Amen, sister. I mean, you don't know how many times I've gone into a show and I panicked. Like I'm in the back, nobody knows this. Like I'm getting ready to sing the national anthem or something. And nobody realizes that in the back, I'm just like, oh my God, I hope my voice will be there.
Right.
And that's what's so nice now. I mean, I actually recently had a performance and had to sing 4 really intense songs. And I felt so great that day.
Right.
I was just like, this is so nice that I could actually enjoy the performance.
Right.
And be out there just doing my thing and not worrying about it.
Because at the end of the day, you're sharing your energy with the world when you sing. Voice is sound, and sound is energy. It's a form of energy that we're bringing from our body and we're giving to the rest of the world. And when we are scared or when we are worried, like you said, am I going to do something that's going to hurt? And what do we do when we're scared or when we're worried? We brace ourselves, right?
Tension.
Right. And that act of bracing yourself because you're scared of hurting yourself, it actually impedes the sound energy that you're trying to share. And it actually doesn't sound as good as you probably think it does.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's my motto. If it doesn't feel good, it probably doesn't sound so good either. It's your body telling you you're probably not doing something right. But at the end of the day, I don't want you to just sound good singing. I want you to feel good singing too.
What would you say, because I've had traditional voice lessons for many years. Yours is different. So how are you different from traditional voice lessons?
For me, it's an entire mind-body connection. Your body cannot do what your brain is sabotaging. And just like I said a second ago, we are using our bodies to create this art, right?
Yeah.
So when your body is your instrument, just like any other athlete, Olympian, pro athlete, they figured out a long time ago that the mental game is just as important as the physical game, right? So yeah, you're working on the technique of singing, just like if you're a, pro baseball player, you're working on the technique of the pitch if you're a pitcher, right? But when you do that, you're training the body to do the same thing over and over again for a desired outcome. And we as singers are no different. We are training the technique of our body, our breath support, our resonance, to do the same thing over and over again for a desired outcome. But if our brain is sabotaging our body, that's not going to happen the way we want it to in its most full potential. Just like with the pitcher, if he's in his head, he's not going to throw a good game.
Yeah.
If his mind is sabotaging his body, it's not going to happen the way he wants it to.
Yeah.
And we're no different. And that's something that I have figured out over the 15 years of my teaching that I wish teachers would have focused on with me, because the difference is so huge when you get out of your head and back into your body. So the way I teach, different from a lot of other teachers, is addressing what's the thing that's going on in your head that's causing the physical tension, that's actually preventing the most effective use of your technique.
Yeah, and I had discovered that I had tension that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. Now, what I love though is that first of all, when I signed up for this 4-month intensive, and we'll talk about that, I didn't know what that really meant, but I was like, I'm going for it. I'm doing this. I'm going to see where this leads me. You started sending me meditations every morning, which I never really did because I can't stand still. But now I look forward to it. And through the different meditations, and you change them up every few weeks, I was like blown away, the messages that I'm getting, but also the questions that you started asking me. And I want you to kind of dive into what this 4-month intensive is, and tell us the difference on that.
Yeah. Well, it operates on a principle that I have come to learn, which is that when you change your thinking, you change your singing. And for a lot of singers who are really dedicated to their craft, either professionals or aspiring professionals, there is something that happens where, and we're talking about singers who are really talented and have wonderful voices, but they reach a point, and I think you experienced this, where you reach a point with your voice where you feel like, I know there's another level in there.
Yeah.
And I've heard it in bits and pieces, maybe in a lesson here or in a performance there, but I can't access it consistently. And it's very frustrating because you feel like you've reached a ceiling. And even though there's part of you that knows there's something beyond the ceiling, you can't get there.
Right.
And that's when the thinking is interfering with the singing. I can give a singer so much technique, and you know me, I work my singers really hard in technique, right? But there's a point at which you have all the technique. You know what you're supposed to be doing in that moment, but yet your body is like, hell no, because your brain is in either some kind of anxiety about the future, like you're thinking about the high note that you have to sing 3 pitches from now, and so your whole body has seized up because you're scared because you don't trust what you have in that moment, or you're reliving some past trauma about when you were, 12 years old and, the stupid choir director told you, you can't sing high, you're an alto. And so you have carried this belief that you can't sing high your entire life. And so you're terrified of it. And these are just silly examples, but they get in there. They get into the mindset. And so the 4-month intensive is about unpacking the stories that you've been telling yourself, unpacking the beliefs that don't serve you anymore, that cause the tensions that you're holding in your body. Because we all understand that we physicalize our feelings, we physicalize our emotions. And for me, over a decade-long deep dive into mindfulness and in my own life, I'm seeing that firsthand, that when I feel something in my emotions, I also take it into my body in some way. Yeah. It's just part of being human. We all do it. But when we take that into our singing and we are unaware of how we're taking that into our singing, we can't fully use our technique efficiently. So the 4-month intensive is designed to help singers change their thinking so they can change their singing. And it's through the guided meditations, through the thought exercises, and then bringing that into the studio, those new awarenesses those new ideas that you were saying,
Yeah.
it's blowing your mind.
It's blowing my mind. Literally, I'll finish like typing things out and I'm like, I had no idea that I was thinking this way.
Right. And then you
Yeah.
wonder, well, why it was so hard for me to do X, Y, and Z. And then you see the mindset that you have around X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z. And you're like, you know, the story I love to tell is of a student of mine who's a wonderful singer. She's super talented. And this is somebody who school was really hard for her growing up. And there was a lot of, I think, lack of self-esteem and shame and lack of self-worth when it came to school. But singing was the thing that she was always good at. And so her entire self-worth, self-esteem was tied up in singing, and her entire hopes for the future and career and everything was tied up in singing and her voice. And that's a lot of pressure to put on this one little thing,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And so you take all of that into the recording studio. She's a recording artist. And no wonder her producer called me and said, when we're just messing around, she's amazing. But once the mic's turned on, there's something that happens, and she becomes safe, and she starts to kind of squeeze. The sound gets a bit squeezed. And I can't merge those two. I can't get her to be that free, amazing singer that I hear when we're just messing around
Right.
when it matters, because she's taking all of that stuff and putting it into that one moment and embodying it
Yeah.
and squeezing. And so the sound sounds like that, right?
Right.
So through the work of the intensive, about 6 weeks in, she started realizing, oh my God, like, well, I have a voice, but I am not a voice. I'm all these other things.
Right.
And, you know, once my job in facilitating this is to help singers make the connections between the meditations and the thought exercises and what you're becoming aware of, and then taking it into the lessons, into the vocal studio, so that then I can say, okay, so you're having trouble with this one section. Remember a couple weeks ago when we were talking about all that old stuff and X, Y, and Z and how it made you physicalize those fears and tensions? Okay, well, that's this.
Yeah.
You're bringing that right here, and then help them to move past it. And it's all just awareness. It's amazing. I don't do very much, believe it or not. You guys are doing all the work.
Well, it's funny because I remember you sharing that story in the studio with me. And right when you shared that story, this big aha came over me, because I remember telling you that, you know, I was bullied when I came from Spain and came to South Carolina. I was actually bullied in school. But the one place where everybody would just hush was when I sang. I sang in, you know, the choir, and then I would do my solos and that kind of thing. And you literally could hear a pin drop. So what did I start associating? I could shut down the bullies and shut them up when I sang, right? So my voice became this thing, right? But it became more than just singing a song. It's like I have to do well because I have to shut down the negative.
Right. So there's an expectation there.
Yeah.
Right. So module number 4, expectations, right? And there's a whole meditation on understanding what expectations are and how they can really get in there and do a lot of damage when they're not come at from a place of awareness. And so you had this expectation that singing was going to make me feel empowered, and then it feel empowered was going to make me successful.
Yeah.
And that's just a story you told yourself.
It's wild, because when I was telling you that I did that party recently, my friend was so nervous. She had to give a speech that night. And I remember doing the meditation of expectation. I told her, I said, you know what? And the whole thing about there is no such thing as perfection.
Yeah.
Right? So I remember telling her, I was like, you know, this whole evening is going to be perfect with all its imperfections.
Right. Perfectly imperfect.
Right. And it was a blast. We both had just such a great time. And yeah, there were little things that happened here and there, and it didn't matter. It added to the evening. So that's what was so nice to do that. And I also remember that we did unpack this thing where I actually got vocal nodules when I was about, I guess I was around 18 or so. And that, because I had to go on vocal rest for so long, it scared me so bad, because I really was depressed during that time, not using my voice, that I get so scared in the future to
Scared of doing the damage again.
Yeah, scared of doing the damage again. So any little thing, oh my gosh, I better not sing, I better not this, I better not that. Let's talk about some of those artists like Sam Smith that's had vocal problems, Adele that's had vocal problems. I mean, there's so many. There's some that have just had to completely stop singing. Like, what's going on there?
Bad technique.
Yeah.
But the problem is, It's not just by technique. It's why. So you've got all these singers who have made careers with these unbelievable sounds, right?
Yeah.
So Adele has this unbelievable sound. And so there's now an expectation and an attachment that she has to sound that way. And the only way she knows how to get that sound, my guess is, I have not worked with Adele, but my guess from listening to her, the only way she knows how to get that sound is by really digging and putting pressure and slamming her voice. And you can't do that without proper breath support. There are these heavy metal artists, the screamers, you know, who,
You're right.
who do it, and they do it tour after tour after tour, and nothing happens.
You're
And it's
right.
because they know how to support it, right? But she doesn't. And you can have a doctor come in and fix the physical damage. You know, an otolaryngologist or a head and neck surgeon can heal the physical damage, be it, in her case, she had a vocal hemorrhage, which is a burst blood vessel in your vocal cords from oftentimes too much pressure being put
I've
on
had
the
that
cords.
before. Oh,
It's
scary.
painful, it's dangerous, it's scary.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a technician come in, a vocal coach or teacher, and help her understand how she got there in the first place, she's just going to go back to singing the way she did and do the damage again. And that's exactly what happened. And I suspect that she did have vocal coaches, she did have voice teachers try to help her with the technique so that she could sing powerfully and not do damage. But nobody got in there with her to help her understand why she thinks she has to sing that way in the first place.
Right.
Right? What is her organic, natural, beautiful sound that has zero attachments to it should sound this way, or it has to be what people expect because she's got all this fame around her. Now her career is so big that it's really hard to change.
Yeah.
That's not that isn't to say that it can't. But if she or Sam Smith or any of these people were to understand why they sing the way they sing,
Right.
why the tensions exist, there's a reason behind the tensions. And you know, a couple minutes ago you asked me how I'm different.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I'm different. I'm asking you, as one of my students, to get under the hood and understand the mindset behind why you have these tensions and habits. I can point out the tension and the habit. Oh, that used to drive me crazy when I was a young singer and a student. When a voice teacher would point out to me, "Oh, you have a lot of tension in your jaw when you sing." Okay.
Okay, then what?
What am I supposed to do to that? Oh,
Right.
you know what? Try some yoga classes. Try some. Oh, okay. Nothing linked it to singing, you know?
Right.
And so the reason I'm offering the intensive and the reason I work the way I do with such a focus on mindfulness and understanding what you're doing in the body from a mindset perspective is because in my experience, those tensions and habits that are affecting you being able to really implement the best technique come from a emotional mindset place.
Yeah.
And they're not just going to go away because you take a yoga class.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. No.
But I'm sure in your experience, you understand how once you start to have the awareness,
Yeah.
you can actually let go of these physical things. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, my thing has always been, as you know, because you've worked with me now for a while, is that I walk in their studio sometimes and I'm just like, oh, my allergies, oh, my allergies, oh, my allergies, you know, because I do suffer from a lot of allergies. But now we've realized, like, we're just going to work through it. Just like if I didn't have a leg, right, then you figure out a way to run that marathon.
Right.
There's been plenty of people that have done it.
Yeah.
And so we work around finding a way. As a matter of fact, I want to show right now a little bit of your clip on working with a student in your studio.
Great.
When a singer walks into my studio, I want them to feel that they are in a safe space, a space where they come to discover their most organic, beautiful, free sound, completely free of the pressures of performance, of recording, of school, of any kind of performance. The main thing I ask of my singers is to be willing to let go of whatever expectations they have of what they think they're supposed to sound like, because it's without those expectations that a singer can truly find their most unique and organic sound. That's my goal for every singer that studies with me. My approach to singing is very holistic. The most important thing a singer learns when first working with me is that their whole body is their instrument, not just their voice. The human body is Mother Nature's most effective instrument for producing resonant sound. But so often, the way a singer uses the body sabotages their sound, and they don't even know it. So a large part of the work that I do is to help my students identify and undo those physical habits and those tensions that get in the way of Mother Nature's most effective production of sound. And then I replace those inefficiencies with a technique that builds upon what our bodies are already set up to do. The technique I teach is not genre specific. I believe healthy singing is healthy singing regardless of the style of music. I work with all kinds of singers, male, female, classical, musical theater, pop singers. Over the last 20 years, I've had the truly unique career experience of being both a classically trained singer, performing with opera companies around the country, and as a recording artist in the commercial pop world. It's that dual experience which gives me a really unique perspective that's so valuable to my students. Classical singers come to me because they want to attain the freedom they perceive pop singers have while still adhering to the classical conventions of form. We work on solidifying breath support and freeing up the resonance. I give classical singers tools to undo tensions and habits that are keeping them stuck in that old, rigid mold of an opera singer and allow them to solidify their technique while finding much more freedom of expression. Pop singers come to me because they want the consistency of breath support and technique that classical singers have without actually sounding like an opera singer. After much trial and error throughout my own career, I finally figured out how to use classical technique in service of pop music. It's not that much different. We work on breath support in the exact same way that an opera singer does, with the exact same technique, but I teach pop singers how to use it within the conventions of their genre. Technical training is only one part of what I do with singers. The other part is teaching singers how to be storytellers. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how technically perfect a singer may be if the audience isn't connecting to their performance on an emotional level. We talk about emotional arcs of songs and connecting to it from an energetic place to bring out many more colors of the student's voice, which results in a much more nuanced and emotionally interesting performance. I always say, singing should feel really good when you're doing it right. It's my privilege to pass on the knowledge I've gained so that my students can experience that joy as I have.
All right, so there you go. I mean, I love working in the studio with you. I love that you're passionate about this. And you also do vocal producing. Like people can hire you if they're getting ready to record in the studio.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the job of the vocal producer is to really get the best performance out of the singer in the studio for their record and help them really sing to that potential. Most record producers double as vocal producers, and a lot of them are really good at it, and some of them are not. And some of them prefer to to bring in a vocal producer who has the language to talk to the singer and just get a faster result. If the vocal producer themselves is not a singer, they may, I'm sorry, not the vocal producer, if the record producer is not themselves a singer or hasn't spent much time training or doing anything, like that, they know the sound that they want to hear. They know what they want to get out of the singer, but they don't really have the way of getting them the language to help them get there. And it can be frustrating for them and it can be frustrating for the singer. For the singer, a singer who just wants to bring in a vocal producer does so because they want to maximize their time in the studio. They don't want to just get frustrated and chase bad take after bad take, right? So when I work, I'll work with the singer in advance of the sessions. However much time the singer feels like they need, we'll work on the songs that they're going to record, getting into the story, getting into the feeling, getting out of any fear that there might be for, this high note, And the other thing is for songwriters, especially if you're a singer-songwriter and you wrote the song, right? Just because you wrote it doesn't mean that you sing it well.
True. There have been songs that I've written that I'm like, not right for me. Let me pitch this to somebody else.
And just because you wrote the song doesn't necessarily mean that you wrote it to your own vocal strengths.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's not a great song and that it shouldn't go on your record. But a lot of times a recording artist is too close to the song to actually hear themselves in a way that's a little bit objective. And make choices for what's going to be the best for that record, for that actual recording. So you have somebody else who's just a little bit removed from it and can say, gosh, that note, can you just hold that like longer? Because it's going to be this beautiful thing if you can just let it ring, or come in and say, all right, I don't want you to be worried about your breath. So let's do some technique. Let's do some breath work so that when you get into the studio, you feel super confident, and then you're not going to be in fear, and then you're going to be more open. You're going to have fun. And that's going to show on the recording.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is definitely something that is so helpful. I always say that it's just like this. When we go back to the question that I asked at the beginning, some people think, you know how to sing, why do you need a coach? But I said, look, there's plenty of football players or quarterbacks, whatever, that know how to play the game, but they still need a coach on the sideline. Imagine a football team without coaches. Forget it, right? So that's exactly what you do, is you really do look at it and you coach, and you're on the outside looking in. We're too close to it.
Right.
So I love what you do. Tell people how they can work with you, because I know you have different tiers of ways that you can work. Even if somebody's in Atlanta, Georgia, they can work with you.
Yeah. So if you're in Los Angeles, you can work with me one-on-one, private voice lessons. You can also do the 4-month intensive, which is what we were talking about, which is just that deep dive.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't live in Los Angeles, you can still work with me online in different ways. You can do the deep dive. It's a little different because you're not here with me, but there are ways, technology being what it is.
Right,
It's, a lot more feasible now than it ever was. If you are a recording artist, coming to Los Angeles to record in studio vocal production is always great. I mean, the thing is, it doesn't matter what way you're working with me. If it's as a teacher or a producer, my job is to bring out the best in you.
Yeah.
I tell everybody, your body already knows how to make sound. Your body is Mother Nature's most effective design for making sound, right? And we're all born with that. I say this all the time. A baby can cry and cry at the top of their lungs, never get hoarse, never get tired.
So right.
Right? And it's the most present, resonant sound. I mean, I have a 4.5-year-old, and I remember for that first year, and it was just like, wow.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's because we are all born with this completely formed, perfect mechanism for making resonant sound. But what happens is, as we get older, we adopt habits and tensions that get in the way of Mother Nature's most effective production of sound. And some of them are physical habits that have nothing to do with singing, that just have to do with how we live in our body. But when your body's your instrument, you take that into your singing.
Right.
And some of them are emotional, psychological habits, like we've been talking about, that get in the way. And so unpacking that in whatever way, shape, or form is my life's work, and getting under the hood and helping you guys to sing with your most true, organic, full sound. And nothing brings me greater joy than when I have a student and I can see the smile behind the eyes as you're making the sound, because you have A, never made a sound like that before, B, it felt amazing, and C, it sounded amazing.
Yeah, I know. It is such a great feeling. Again, because then it becomes fun. It's not this, I have to perform, which should be fun, right? Yeah. So how do they find you? Your website?
Yeah, my website is ardenkaywinvocalstudio.com.
Spell Kaywin.
Kaywin. And Arden is Arden.
Right.
And there's a number of ways you can contact me through the website. I do believe my phone number is listed on the website, as well as contacting me via email. And every singer is different. You're all coming at this with, different goals and different frustrations and different past experiences.
Yeah.
So I like to talk to prospective students first to find out more about what your goals are and what you're hoping to change, so I can suggest what I think the best path is forward.
I love that. I love it. Oh my gosh, thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm so glad that you could share this whole thing, that I could let you guys in on my little secret of what I do for vocal lessons. And I'm telling you guys, you will not be sorry to try this avenue. The most you can do is just try it. Just see if it's for you. I know that's definitely changed things for me. And will hopefully help somebody else out there. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining us here on Focus TV.